So yeah, so what have been what do you think's been the biggest accomplishment of Bitcoin Beach so far in trying to create that circular economy of Bitcoin users?
I think just showing that average everyday people can use Bitcoin seamlessly without any problem. I mean, we have people that, from our US standards, we would say they're impoverished, people that are living in shacks made of tin with dirt floors, but they're transacting on their smartphone, making purchases, sending payment to the local store and having food delivered to them, all in Bitcoin, something that you can't even do in the US. So I think just being able to prove that there is that capability in this whole thing, that Bitcoin's not going to be used to buy coffee, it's not going to be used for small purchases. It's just not true. In the US, we have so many payment options. And so maybe for people, it doesn't seem like a priority. But for places like El Salvador, where the majority of people don't have bank accounts and hardly anybody has credit cards, the fact that they have mobile banking now, the fact that they have payment rails that they can connect without having to be there in person, that they have an account with our wallet that they can store wealth. I mean, it's a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, why do you think having access to banking is so important?
I think for a lot of reasons. I think one, for people to become savers, they have to have a safe place to save. And if you're just hiding it under your mattress, there's a chance of it being stolen, but there's also a good chance that there's going to be a family member that needs it and it's sitting right there. And so I think, especially in Latin culture, if you're holding cash and you have a family member who needs it and you don't turn it over to them, it's likely you'll be ostracized. And so I think it's more of a social challenge for them to save. And so I think for them to be able to have money that's in a bank account or have it in a Bitcoin wallet that's not just sitting there in front of them, it makes it a little easier for them to say, hey, I'd like to help you, but I only have $5 right now. So and that allows them to save more longer term. Where if they feel like, man, I have this money and somebody's going to come and ask me for it, I might as well go buy new rims for my car or buy some concrete block for the second story we plan on doing down the road. So you'll find historically people have saved their money in those type of ways, by buying block, by buying cement, by buying a car, actually as a savings vehicle. And that's super inefficient. So with banking, and then better yet, with Bitcoin wallets, where they can be saving in a currency that's appreciating, they have this ability to save in a way that's way more efficient and allows them to accrue wealth. And we're seeing it's really impacting the culture and really creating a culture of savings, where historically there was more of a sense, well, I have the money now, I better go spend it. Now they're like, well, if I go spend $5 on lunch, I'm gonna have to spend my Bitcoin, and I think it's gonna be higher 6 months from now. So I'll just eat at home today, and so I can keep that money in Bitcoin and allow it to keep appreciating. And so we're seeing a culture of savings really develop for the first time.
Yeah, that's huge. And the concept of time preference, I think, that's what got me into Bitcoin. Full steam ahead was when I read the Bitcoin standard and Saifedean outlined that concept of time preference and how the actual money itself influences it. Um, and that definitely was a different perspective for me too. It's like that idea of savings versus um, spending or putting it into risk assets that are a little bit less certain, at least from like a monetary standpoint. Um, so yeah, it's super interesting. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've been very successful in getting a large percentage of your area to adopt it. What percentage would you say people are using Bitcoin down there?
I would say within our small town, which has about 3,000 people, probably 90% of the families have at least used Bitcoin at some point in the last 6 months. I would say probably about half of them are using Bitcoin on a regular basis. And there's about 40 businesses in our area that are accepting Bitcoin. So probably more than half the businesses are accepting Bitcoin. And some of them, it can be more than half of their sales are coming in Bitcoin. So it's not that dollars are not still used here. They definitely are, but especially for most of the local people, they're used kind of side by side with Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really spectacular, and that's the selling point that I try and give people out here is we know that our monetary system is probably not sustainable and it has negative impacts on us. And so having the um, backup infrastructure to transition in the case of like everything going bust is, I think, really, really important on top of all the other, things that you outlined as far as like Bitcoin being a better money because it encourages savings and wealth creation, and is much better store of value than the dollar. What type of services do the merchants use to accept Bitcoin?
So right now, everybody's just been using kind of more consumer level wallets. So originally we were using a wallet of Satoshi. Actually, originally we were using, I think, just a blockchain wallet. We were doing everything on chain, and as fees started to increase, we quickly realized that we needed to transfer everybody over to using the Lightning Network. Fortunately, that was right about the time that some great new wallets were coming out, and the system was becoming much more robust. And so I was surprised at how seamless it was for us to transfer over. And so initially we were using Wallet of Satoshi, which has a great user experience. It's very easy to operate. It's very intuitive. But then we were actually connected with a company called Galloway Money, and they really wanted to focus on community baking and developing wallets that would really serve the needs of people in the developing world. And so we kind of came to an agreement with them that they would develop a wallet specifically for our project for free for us, just because they believed in it. And in exchange, we would give them feedback on how users were using it, on what features they wanted. And so we've kind of been in this process building it together. And through that, we've been able to do a lot of cool things with the wallet. We actually have a map within the wallet that has all the fixed locations that accept Bitcoin. So people can pull up their map and see all the different stores in the area where they can spend Bitcoin. And then it also allows them to do kind of push pay payments to the stores. So instead of the stores having to create a Lightning invoice, they can just call up their username within the wallet and send directly to the store. And then it also gives the ability to have a standing QR code for a Lightning invoice, which isn't available right now, within the Lightning network, but we kind of have a workaround that auto generates an invoice when they scan the QR code. So it's allowed us to take out some of the friction points, because that's the other thing we realized for the stores. People don't like change, and they don't want to move from one thing to another unless it's significantly easier and better. And so we had to make sure that using Bitcoin for the stores was a far superior experience to cash. And now with these things, and initially the stores had to, put down what they're doing, pull out their phone, open their account, create an invoice, have the purchaser scan it and make the payment. It wasn't a huge thing, but it adds a little time, it adds a little friction. If it's a little mom and pop restaurant, maybe there's only one person working in there, cooking the food and taking the payment. So they'd have to, wash their hands, put it down, create this. But with this ability, they don't have to do anything except look over at their phone and see that transaction come in. So it's been fun kind of seeing how people actually want to use this on a daily basis. And a lot of times what the engineers and the technical people think people need and what people that are actually living in these places think they need are two different things. And so we're able to kind of walk that with them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, the learning curve is definitely there, and that's kind of a typical response I see with people a lot of times is like, Bitcoin in and of itself of like understanding it is a major paradigm shift from the traditional systems. But, it's like, I've experienced that like working with, family members trying to convince them to stop sending checks and just use Venmo, or, some Cash App or a service like that, and just that transition can be a little bit overwhelming for people sometimes. So yeah, I totally get it. How does that, like, like using a wallet for services, how does that compare to the kind of traditional financial system that's down there? Do they use payment processors and debit cards and things like that, or is it mostly a cash based economy?
So it depends on the level of store. So you have the bigger businesses, the bigger operations, and they all accept credit cards. But you have a lot of small mom and pop stores that would never be qualified to accept, usually have to go through a qualification process and be able to process a certain amount and then be able to pull your credit and do all those things to be approved to take credit cards. And most of these smaller businesses just will never be approved. And so they've had to do everything cash in the past. The other thing, because El Salvador is a smaller country and there's not as much competition within the credit card market, the fees are crazy out of sight for the merchants. I mean, they generally pay about 6%,
Mm.
which is close to double what merchants pay in the US. And so, that also is a huge obstacle for people to 6% can sometimes be somebody's profit margin. So if they're paying that in credit card fees, it makes it unsustainable.
Yeah, that's pretty wild, and that's another big selling point for Bitcoin in the United States, is because even the 3% fee that people typically, or merchants are typically eating from using the payment processors is quite a bit of money. I mean, we see it, like, you walk into a small gas station uh, in a rural area, and they'll have a little sign that says, there'll be an additional fee charged to you if the payment's under this, or it'll even say we don't accept debit credit transactions for anything under this as a result of that. Because and especially right now when business slows down. I was in a local coffee shop um, right towards the beginning of the pandemic, and when things had really slowed down, and I just asked them, like, what are the fees that you're being charged by the payment processor? And I think they were using Square. And they were telling me, like, the fees had been jacked up, as their business had slowed down a tremendous amount. And yeah, it's just a major headache to deal with. It's kind of like an additional tax almost.
No,
um,
100%. And Square is actually one of the better companies out there when it comes to fees. I know within, so I have a business in the US. We have a food service business. It's seasonal. And I think last year we were shut down because of the pandemic, but the year before, when I was doing my accounting at the end of the year, we had spent $40,000 just in fees from the credit card processors. And, that's a huge chunk of what our profits were for the year. So, and that's at a much lower rate than they're paying here in El Salvador. So for a lot of these businesses, it just would never make sense to take credit cards. But because of that, they've been confined to cash. They have the security issues of cash. They have the inconvenience that comes with cash and needing change, the time to, make change and all those things. And so for them to kind of leapfrog credit cards and go right to Bitcoin, it's faster. Lightning transactions happen much faster than credit card transactions. And then the fees are, 1% of what a credit card transaction would be. So they're able to leapfrog this, and they're not beholden to one processor or needing to have one certain type of equipment. They can do it on any phone, and they can interact with any wallet. And so it really is a very freeing aspect for the merchants.
Yeah, that was a really fun interview that I did with Mike Peterson from Bitcoin Beach. And if you liked it, make sure to go check out the full interview I did with him. And you can find it on here on YouTube, on my channel, Tucson Bitcoin, or you can listen to it in audio form on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast from. Uh, but yeah, Bitcoin adoption is exploding in a small town in El Salvador, and it's a game changer down there. So hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to go follow Mike on Twitter at Bitcoin Beach, and have a good one.